Hello everyone. In this tutorial I'm going to show you the functionalities of the Debtors subledger within the A worksheet of the cash book file. Again, you can either enter the details manually or in the Debtors control subledger you can link them to your invoices as you would normally link in any Excel file. For example, if we link a fig invoice to this Debtors subledger, you enter the equal sign, open the fig invoice, left click on the date to pick up the date from the actual invoice that's been prepared in Excel. The reference number in this case would be the invoice number, and we can pick that up for the debtors control account. The supplier or depositor column for the debtors control account will be the customer's name, and you can either pick that up from the invoice also, or you could use the debtors list worksheet within the cash book file to enter the customer's name on this worksheet so that you keep the names of your customers consistent for when you need to sort and search on a particular customer. And then you can pick that customer's name up off of the debtors list. Any details that you would like to enter, whether you're doing it manually or whether you're collecting it from an invoice that you've prepared in Excel, you could pick up. And you would enter the amount of the invoice as a positive, and again either manually or you can collect it from the invoice, and that amount would include VAT. Then you would allocate the invoice to a sales account and the VAT category depending on whether you registered for VAT or not, and recording a sales invoice is then as simple as that. When the customer pays, the entry will be treated the same as an interbank receipt entry because the customer will pay into a bank account for which a cash book is represented on this A worksheet. So the money will go into that bank account and you will allocate that money then to the debtors control account. In this case, I'll just go and enter a transaction here for us for Mr. Sugar having paid. Let's use one of these interbank receipt amounts. Just change that to 61 just for training purposes. And what you can then do is you can copy that entry that's come into the bank account when Mr. Sugar paid into the debtors control account. And paste it. And the amount you would then enter manually as a negative 61. Make very sure that in the debtors control account you use the same name that you're using for Mr. Sugar in the same format. For when you sort, enter the invoice number so that when you summarize and you're searching for all entries that you've done with Mr. Sugar, or all transactions that you've done with Mr. Sugar, it will then find it since you've used a standard name and can search specifically on that customer for any entries or transactions that you've incurred with the customer. And you can then see that for that invoice number 1022, you invoiced on such and such a date and the customer paid on such and such a date. And you can process the invoices, receipts, credit notes, anything that you require to control your customers' accounts. The creditors control account or subledger within the A worksheet would work exactly the same, except you would obviously allocate the supplier's cost to an expense and not a sale. Whatever expense the supplier is charging you for, allocate your VAT category, enter the amount as a negative for a supplier's invoice, check that your must be null amount is in fact null, enter the date, the invoice number of the supplier, the name of the supplier you would enter then on your creditors list to ensure that it's consistent. And when you're doing any transactions for that creditor, you will then pick it up off of the creditors list. And when you create a new sheet for the next month, it will carry forward all the debtors' names that you've entered and all the creditors' names that you've entered. You won't need to re-enter them, they'll already be there. The date, whatever the case may be, within the month that you are preparing your cash books, the invoice number of the supplier, whatever that may be, and any details that you would like to enter, if any, in the detail column. And once again, when you summarize, you would be able to then sort and filter and search for any transactions that you did with any of the suppliers that you've entered transactions for. And in the month-end procedures that we'll come to in a later tutorial, we'll copy each cash book's summary worksheet into your summary accumulated to keep a rolling total of all the transactions that you've done from the month of first using the FIG cash books. And then you'd be able to search for every transaction that you've done in that period of time with a debtor being a customer or a supplier being a creditor. When you pay the supplier, you would do exactly the same as we did for the debtors control. You could copy the transaction to the creditors control account, allocate it to the account, make sure that you pick up the standard name that you're using for that supplier, and enter the transaction as a positive when you are paying a supplier, as opposed to a negative when a customer pays you. In the next tutorial, I'll show you how the inventory control subledger works within the cash book. I'll chat to you then.